Welcome to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. And now here's your host, Wade T. Lightheart.
What if you could double your energy naturally without caffeine or stimulants in just 3 short months? It's not only possible, you can transform every aspect of your health if you follow the 12-week blueprint we've created for you in the Awesome Health System. The Awesome Health System is a free course where you receive a daily video lesson spanning the most cutting-edge secrets for air, water, exercise, sunshine, optimizers, mindset, and education. It's something most companies would charge hundreds of dollars for, yet you get it for free when you go to bioptimizers.com. To access your course, register to download the PDF report called 3 Phases of Bioptimization, which gets you access to the report and daily access to the first lesson in the 12-week, 84-day Awesome Health course.
Yeah. Wow, that'd be so. Are they doing this with like backdated data based on DNA?
This is from the Framingham Heart Study. So wow. It's a basically a robust data set, right? And it's respected in the medical community. But what I like so much about this is that now I can have my protocols in health optimization, which I'll explain shortly, which is very simple, really, and hold them against illness medicine protocol and say, hey, your illness medicine protocol aged the patient by 15 years, in the 6 months, right? And look, that same patient, I took him out of your protocol, and in 3 months, I've basically made him younger by 5 years. So you could see now
that's a 20-year variance.
Yeah. So you could see now the comparison, right? So that's why it becomes exciting for me, because no one's paying attention to this. In fact, Wade, when I tried to get CME credits for a lecture, like I was going to deliver a lecture and say, I want this lecture to have CME credits. And the board said, no, you cannot get CME credits for this because mitochondria is basic science. Can you imagine? Right?
Wow.
So
that's so arrogant.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So no one's paying attention to mitochondria, microbiota, epigenetics, and then of course we're seeing a lot of things about sleep, right? Chronobiology, how it raises your inflammatory cytokines if you don't get enough sleep, and how it changes your mood, your neurotransmitters, and so on. And no one was paying attention to the artificial light that we were using, and the room temperature, etc. What is sleep really like? Why do we need it? What are the sleep cycles, and so on? And I thought that this was important information to give a patient. Like, for example, a patient comes to me and said, I'm already really become so forgetful, blah, 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 suddenly, and so on and so forth. And then if you just dig a little bit, just a little bit on the sleep, it's like, have you been getting sleep recently? No, not in the last few weeks because of blah blah blah, stress and so on. As you can see, and you're ready to treat the patient with some drug, that will address
Ambien or something,
or worse, a drug that will address a mild cognitive decline, because you test and it has mild cognitive decline, but it's temporary, right? If you address the sleep, then the cognition will return back to his baseline.
Wow, very cool. So this is what you're doing at this. Yeah, this is what you're doing at the. You're actually building models, health optimization models, to compare against the medical intervention.
Yes, there are 7 pillars of health optimization.
Can you share those?
Yes, the mitochondria is bioenergetics, right? There's an index there called the bioenergetic index, developed by a company out in Boston. And then there's microbiota. Mayo has developed a health index there. I think they're validating it now. And then, of course, epigenetics, there's the clocks. We don't have, there's now sleep scoring available. But currently you have to use the an EEG to actually create an index for sleep. So it's not yet that practical, but with dry electrodes and stuff, I think you should be able to do that as well, right? And then the other thing that the main module, in fact, that I started with is a module called Clinical Metabolomics. And this is my response to the fact that we've become so genetically oriented that no one's paying attention to the metabolites the body's producing. And the technology now exists for us to be able to measure these metabolites, right? Before, we just used to memorize the metabolites of the Krebs cycle, right? Now you cannot get away with just that anymore. You have to know what the cofactors are that make it run and so on and so forth, because the technology exists to measure them. In other words, we can take a look inside the cell, take a look at the metabolites, and people don't know that there's a human metabolome database, right? Much as there's a human genome database, there's a human metabolome database. And why did I focus on a metabolome? Well, it's very simple reason, Wade. You know, I cannot see a mercury poisoning in your gene. So...
right.
Right.
But the metabolites will be deposited in amongst the cells, which can cause disruption in its function.
Yes. So the farther you go away from the gene, the more you could see the interaction of the body with the environment, right? The more you could see and that is clinically actionable. You could see, for example, deficiencies in vitamins, minerals, hormones, and so on, right? And so that's basically the key module that I worked on. So now that we can measure this, don't ask me whether or not you need vitamin E. We can measure that stuff. If you need it, we'll give it. If you don't, we won't, right? Let's make use of these developments that are already there, right? So then after that, I did bioenergetics, gut microbiota, chronobiology, epigenetics, and then there's a whole field called exposomics, which is your total exposure to environmental to the environment, right?
Pollution.
For example, yes, radiation,
chemicals,
pollution,
EMFs, all this stuff.
Heavy metals from food. I've had rice in my patients lately that have I call them borderline deficiencies and subtle toxicities, right? You could see the mercury, you could see the mercury slowly rising, and you could do something immediately about that, right? You know that, for example, alpha lipoic acid is a natural chelator of the body. It's produced by the body specifically for that purpose. And the other module that we're looking at is evolutionary medicine, right? And evolutionary medicine, as I told you, gives you an evolutionary perspective that much of what we regard as disease is actually the body's compensatory mechanism, right? And the easy way to explain that is that, for example, all of your cells are in agreement, right? That they are going to abide by the rules, right? But if you provide a noxious stimulus like a poison or something like that, one cell will say, my primary directive is to survive and reproduce, and therefore it will break the chains of the regulation. It will say, I'm not going to be subject to immune surveillance, and there you begin. You have the genesis of the cancer cell. From the level of the cell, if you look at it, it is doing what it's supposed to do, survive and reproduce. But for us as an entire multicellular organism, then it's bad for us, right? But for the cell, it's good for the cell. So yeah, when we're talking about health now, we have to look at it from these various different levels, right? I consider the body as a network of cooperating cells, right? And they throw off metabolites that you can measure, right? So what you do is that if you could see a borderline deficiency, for example, you bring those levels back to when you were between 21 and 30 years old, right? There's no claim. It's just you balance them back to between 21 and 30 years old. It's because it's a time that your body is deemed to be optimal, right? You bring the levels back there, and then any side effect would be a beneficial side effect, right? So people have been telling me, Dr. Ted, why don't you say, you're able to treat diabetes and you cure diabetes and so on. One patient like 30 years on metformin and then now not on any single drug, right? And that's what I don't want to do, right? Because then I will be abutting directly into illness medicine. I came from there. I know how that thing, a whole system thinks, right? Everything is in terms of disease and in terms of 5-year survival rates, right? And so on. But my model is actually very simple because in medical school, you are taught anatomy, physiology, pathology, right? And then pharmacology and surgery. That's all you do all the time.
But not ophthalmology.
Yeah.
the optimization
yes.
of biology, yes. Which is why we call our company Bioptimizers.
That's
the study of that.
Yeah, that's why I call it health optimization medicine, right?
Beautiful.
Health optimization medicine is the maintenance and promotion of health. So in other words, your car, if you're a car, right? What we know how to do as doctors is to change your tire, meaning you get a heart transplant, right? Or to give you a coolant, because your engine is overheated, we give you like an acetaminophen or something for your fever, right? We know how to do that, but we don't know how to, before we didn't have any signals, right? Like, oh, your rear tire pressure is actually decreasing, right? Or you need to change oil now, or you need a servicing of this, you need more of this fluid, and so on. That those indicators are now available in your metabolite levels. The technology did not exist before, but it exists now. So why don't we move away from illness medicine and take a look at health maintenance and health promotion? And that's why I don't call it preventive medicine. Because preventive medicine is really a term from illness medicine, which has to do with vaccines and so on and so forth, right? And it has to deal with populations, right? It has to deal with populations. Here, we're dealing with an individual person as an ecosystem. So when illness medicine is asking for where are your quantitative studies, we cannot do quantitative studies, right?
They're qualitative studies.
It's qualitative because it's high. Perfect. See, and you understand it, right? So because what's good for the goose is not necessarily good for the gander in this case, right? As in the case of
someone with high levels of mercury, for example, require different interventions to take that before anything else needs to be addressed. If you're looking at resources, for someone that doesn't have that has bad higher metabolites of something else, or they have maybe a physical condition like heart disease or something, you have to develop protocols and systematically based on the most egregious issue versus the next one, and then ultimately okay, well, how do we go in a direction that reverses the aging trend? That be right?
No, wait, you're too neat. I say it's a successful approach because it's a network, right? You cannot put anything in a hierarchy. And this is very true for hormones. For example, we know that the hormones, they now do testosterone replacement therapy or a bioidentical hormone replacement therapy for women and so on. And I don't like that because you're only replacing one of them when you know very well that this is a network. So I never replace any of those singly. You have to take a look at where they are in the network and what they're doing, right? Because they are all attached to one another. What we see in illness medicine are extremes, right? But what we're doing here is simply taking a look at what's optimal, right? What's optimal for you to maintain health. And to make the point about being highly individual more poignant is that the husbands usually come to me after their wives have seen me, and they go, I want the same thing that you're giving her. And I said, why? And she's always asking for sex now. And like, no, I can't give you what I'm giving her. You begin to grow boobs. So, but anyway, it's just it just drives home the point that each person's health is different, right? And for me, those imbalances, right? So is it instead of illness medicine diagnoses and treats disease, right? Health optimization medicine detects and corrects imbalances. And right now, it's at the level of metabolome. It's because it's what we can prove. But Wade, if you can give me a machine that detects the subtle energies in the body that is verifiable and so on, then, we can go down to that level of subtle energies and say, okay, this is validated and so on. It's repeatable, and here are the ways to correct this. Right?
We can do this, for example, in brain state neurofeedback training, that we can detect the prevalence of various types of brain frequencies that are being generated or created or in the brain in various peoples, and we can train these things. So would you say that that's the beginning, like, scientific feedback systems, starting with the brain, that we might be able to develop in the future in a variety of areas of the body?
Yes, Wade, I know you're a big fan of neurofeedback and all of this, but I also like to challenge you with something, right?
Please.
Because neurofeedback and all of that is dependent on the electrochemical activity of the nervous system, right? It's essentially what I call the digital component, right?
Right.
But that's the yang energy, right?
Yes.
There. But there's an older system that's equivalent to grandma, which is the hormonal system, or messages that are going through blood, right? Which is hormonal. That's why when you try to work with patients on that, you cannot say grandma now. No, it goes cycles in months and so on and so forth. And so it should be, for example, when we're looking at these types of detections, right? We should take a look at both the analog and the digital systems, and not just the digital system. The digital system is great because it's easy, right? You can detect, even if the technology or the engineering can be challenging to separate out the waves and so on and so forth, but it could be done, right? But what I'm looking at is like, what about the other component, right? The one that is not electrochemical, the one that's actually in the liquid portion of your body that's circulating, and if you take a look, the body is about 60 to 80% water, right? So we have to be paying attention also to that part. And that's a challenge. Like, how do you detect, both, so that you could actually balance both and not just the electrical part?
And what the optimal correlation between the two would actually be?
Yeah, because wait, I am one of the key things that I would like to share with your listeners actually is that I look at what's exactly is fundamental, for example, in terms of our behavior, right? And you could see that very clearly in the development of our autonomic nervous systems. The sympathetic is for fight and flight, and the parasympathetic is for rest and digest, right? And if you take a look at even single-celled organisms, they will move away from noxious stimuli and they will move towards food, right? So you could already see that. And then if you take a look at the current models of emotion, you'll see that there are only two axes. One is, going towards or going away from
moving towards, moving away. Tony Robbins does this in his seminars, talking about what are you avoiding and what are you moving towards.
But the other the y-axis is actually the intensity, right? And you could draw all the different emotions right there, and you could see that it's just really drawn from two things, right? The primitive response of your autonomic nervous system and the energetic requirement of that particular emotion, right? So when you put them together, you see whether it's an approach or avoidance. If it's an approach of something that you like with high intensity, then you're excited, right? Joy. If you approach at high intensity and it's something that you actually don't like, then you have anger. So
wow, so that's very interesting. That's a very amazing distinction, and I'm going to just share this with my listeners because that's a personal thing. One of the variances in my own consciousness that I've noticed most common, almost everybody who knows me as a very, what they would classify as an intense kind of guy. And my two vacillations that I would say that I deal with is intense joy, which is the primarily default system, which I've worked really hard to get to that more often. But if it's not, it's an intense anger.
Yeah, they're both up in energy.
Correct. Yeah, they're both up in energy. So what would be the correlate? And I'm going to be totally selfish here. What would be the correlative components that would create that based on what you've just described? Would you imagine? Now, obviously, you would just be, kind of figuring this out or suspicious.
Hold on.
Yeah.
In terms of you're asking about the neural correlates or the correlates in the functioning of the brain, or or you're asking me why is it exactly that you're that way? So,
yeah. What is there a biochemical reason or a neurophysiological reason or a hormonal reason that would lead a person towards maybe that where someone else might feel low energy and maybe depressed would be the things that they feel?
Yeah. Each person. So imagine the y-axis to be intensity, right? Yep. High energy, low energy, and this is approach and avoidance, right? So, and then you could imagine, you can plot all emotions like the numbers on a clock. You could put fear at noon and anger at noon. You see,
right?
So, this brings us to the center of the clock, right? Which is what's called the individual set point. So your set point is actually, if you imagine that there is a putative center of that clock, then your set point, Wade, is probably more set higher in the y-axis because you imbue a lot more things with energy, right? So that's your individual set point. It can be determined by many things, right? By your genetics, by your environment, like the personality that developed as a result of your interaction with the environment and people. I always tell people that we're, aside from the fact that we are pre-programmed by evolution, right when the senses begin to hear, right, or feel things like vibrations and stuff, you start getting programmed. That's why a baby would know the mother's voice or the father's voice. You could test and so on. So there are so many of those things that when you actually are old enough to realize that, like you, Wade, this is me. My friends tell me I'm this and this, and I think there's some truth to that. Now you see, with this kind of model, you could actually take a look at where your set point is. Right, you're not exactly at the center of the clock. Right.
Correct.
Yeah, and then for people who are optimistic, there's probably skewed more towards the approach side. And for people who are pessimistic, they're probably skewed more towards the avoid side. And people who are depressed, they're on the avoid and, depressed side and low energy. So but that's all, that's just really coming in from something fundamental in us when, that already existed when we were still single cells. Those are already things that we did. And then it's encapsulated in our system. And then what happens is that, now these are what's called, the limbic system, where the emotions are processed, etc., are considered part of the lower and the higher systems would be the cortex, right? But the cortex is a new addition, or there's a part of the brain, that's in the folds, etc., etc. That's a new addition, and my sense right now is that we haven't even scratched the surface on how to use it. As it is, we're with the way we're mastering the prefrontal cortex, because we have a prefrontal cortex, I think we're just early in the development, right? Early in the development right now that, instead of before, when we were not humans and we didn't have any prefrontal cortices, we would be like dogs, and we would be the dogs, right? And we would just essentially be focused in the present moment. Or that's why they say the cat is a great Zen teacher, because it's just focused in the present moment, right? But once you put the prefrontal cortex that can plan and can think about the past, then suddenly you're always planning and thinking about the past, or worrying about the future, thinking of the past, without staying at the present moment. And I think that's remedied by meditation. Of course, is one of the things that you do, right? And I think that's good training for us. I think meditation, if you don't want to think of it as anything else, as a spiritual experience, anything else, I think it's a way for you to master, at least a functioning of your prefrontal cortex, that it is not on all the time, to make you live in the future, or to always remember the past. But be present, because hey, your daughter is asking you a question. Stop scrolling your Instagram. So these kinds of things are very simple, right? Are very simple, but in the end, what matters is how do we apply it to our life, right? We have all of these models and so on, but for me, what's important is how do I apply this to my life, such as I decrease suffering in myself, right? And Smarter Not Harder, which makes all of these products, like the nootropic line and other products that are coming up with cannabis for sleep, for pain, and insomnia, for anxiety, is the slogan of Smarter Not Harder is actually to decrease suffering in myself, right? And to decrease suffering in others, knowing that there is no other. So
the Bioptimizer mission is to help more of the world fix their digestion at a core level. The truth is, your digestion is only as good as your enzyme levels. Imagine trying to build a house with a tree. It's impossible. You need to chop the tree down into small pieces. Similarly, in order for your food to be used by your body, it must be broken down into a bioavailable form. And that's what enzymes do, converting protein into amino acids, fats into specific fatty acids, and carbohydrates into usable energy units. We start out with an abundance of enzymes, and that's why kids can digest just about anything really quickly. The thing is cooking food kills enzymes, as they cannot survive at temperatures above 118 degrees. So years of this ends up depleting our bodies and leads to weak digestion. Taking digestive enzymes like masszymes, which has an incredibly high level of protease for digesting protein, as well as other critical enzymes like lipase, amylase, and others, is a total game changer. Suddenly, you strengthen your digestion, eliminate gas and bloating, boost metabolism, and multiply your energy. Most importantly, you fix your digestion at a core level. To get started with masszymes and to save 10% on your first order, go to masszymes.com. That's masszymes.com, and use the code MASS10, MASS10.
That's beautiful. Our slogan is to end physical suffering and activate biologically optimized health. And so we share similar intentions.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, if we already know right now what's making us suffer, right? And it's age old, but we're now able to prove it neuroscientifically that it's there. It's an illusion. It's a processing of the brain and so on. And we do our best with various techniques. Neuro-feedback is one of them. Psychedelics is another. Meditation is a big tool. Because aside from recognizing the self from arising, you could also stay in the present moment without having to engage, the planning abilities of your prefrontal cortex, and saying that, hey, my companies are going to make $4.5 billion soon. So you instead of worrying about that, you're actually in the present moment, right? And doing that. So what is important, and this is a question that was asked of me, and I was surprised because I've always wondered, but of course I had an answer here, so I thought about it. Is like, so how do you measure? How do you measure something like this? Because I'm all for measurement, right? Detect and correct. So how do you detect and correct? Well, detection is done by meditation, and the correction is actually a lot simpler than you would think. It comes from a saying that I just made up, which is, measure your day not by the goals that you achieve or you checked off that day, right? But by the time you were present for each and every activity that was there.
Beautiful.
So if you just plan for 15 minutes every day, like these are the things that these are my inputs. I explained this to my students this way. It's like, these are my inputs, these are the things that I need to read or want to read today, information, and these are my outputs. I have to be able to write at least 250 words in my journal, finish my lecture, and then that 15 minutes is there, right? Finish, planning, done, right? The rest of your day is execution. So when you execute, be present when you execute each activity. There's no point in actually, thinking about the future or the past. You are just executing. Your time for thinking about the future and the past is finished. It was 15 minutes that morning. It's like done.
Right. Two questions come up. Because you've been so generous with your time. 2 questions, and you can answer them in whatever order that you would like. Number 1, what are the health practices that you advocate maybe for yourself or universally things to be aware of for health optimization? And then the second one is, can you talk about your work with prescriptions and the whole the line of products and things that you are doing in the world?
Okay. For the first one, we already talked about health optimization, medicine, and practice, right? And as I said, if you want to really be serious about your health and you can afford it, get yourself your nutrient metabolites, your hormones tested. Right?
Any particular tests that you like?
I actually, most of my tests are actually coming from Genova because they were the first ones out, but there are many other labs out there that offer, same services. But I take a look at nutrients, the macronutrient components, like your essential amino acids, your fatty acids, how your carbohydrates is metabolized, and then the metabolites of the Krebs cycle, and then after that all the micronutrients that are needed. So they can plot out all the levels for you now, and you could see if you are eating the same food constantly, you could see what you need to add in your food and what you need to remove, right? And then, so when you correct those imbalances, remember that when you're taking this nutrients, or if you have a doctor working with you, these hormones, it takes the blood about 3 months to replenish yourself. It's 90 to 120 days, right? For each fresh blood cell. So you expect the levels to actually start going up then. And when they do, usually you won't experience anything anywhere from 3 to 9 months. And I want you to keep this in mind when you're doing this, is that prevention is always in hindsight, right? So the way I say it is that if no one bombed the World Trade Center, right, then no one would ever know the extent by which they tried to prevent it. It's the same thing. So a patient would come to me and say, Dr. Ted, I've been a year in your protocol and I don't feel anything. It's like, the year before you came to me, how many times did you get sick? 6 times. What about this year? Oh my God, I've not gotten sick at all. So it's that kind of hindsight that happens here, because the thing that's important to remember is that if you think of yourself as a car and we top off all of your hormones, nutrients, etc., I cannot prevent you from off-roading all the time, right? And that's how rough you live your life. That's beyond my control, right? It's beyond my control. So all I can guarantee you is we could actually raise those, but I cannot guarantee you that your lifestyle, that you will follow lifestyle recommendations. However, if you don't test, or you do not have the resources to get yourself tested, and work with a health optimization physician, which is a health optimization medicine, or a health optimization practitioner, right? And the only difference is that the latter cannot prescribe hormones. Is to live. Is actually to live a lifestyle that's conducive to health. Number one, you sleep well, right? You learn about sleep and what the good sleep habits are, sleep hygiene, and so on. Sleep well. When you wake up in the morning, hydrate well. The body is usually hydrated after night. You drink a couple of glasses of water. Males need about 2.9 liters of water a day. Females need about 2.7 liters of water a day, including those from food, right? And then you eat well, study nutrition. If you want to do intermittent fasting so you can boost your mitochondria, do so. Because all of those information are available there. So, you eat well, and then you move well, meaning you exercise, right? There's just, this was surprising in Journal of American Medical Association, which is an illness medicine journal. They basically said 8,000 to 12,000 steps of whatever intensity, right, will decrease all-cause mortality by over 60%. So you could already put those, move well. If you are doing HIIT, go do so, and then breathe well, right? And aside from making sure that the air that you're breathing is not polluted, that also means meditation. Right, so you calm down and calm your mind, observe the contents of your consciousness, and it's the goal is not being a good meditator. The goal is being able to take that state out when your eyes are actually open and dealing with the world, right? Because you're very present when you're meditating, and you need to transfer that same thing when you are actually. That's why that's what I meant by saying being present with whatever that you're doing, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah. So and then you relate well, right? Because toxic relationships will kill you. Right, they will drive up your stress levels and so on. And I recommend to people, no matter how difficult it is, if you are dealing with a toxic boss, for example, and you can't stand it anymore, and it's making you sick all the time, etc., it's not worth it. What's important to you, right? For me, there are very few things that are important that you should hold sacred, right? One is your life, right? You hold your life as extremely valuable. That's why you don't put yourself in situations that's gonna kill you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have done skydiving. I know what the odds are, but you can make me ski because I don't want broken bones. So the next thing is that your health, right? What's the point of living a life in pain, right? So you should value your health. And the next thing is time. You where are you putting your where are you allocating your time? And that corollary of that actually is the fourth one, which is very important and very practical, is attention. You could see the quality of your life by what you pay attention to. right? So and so those things, because if you take a look at it, your attention is probably your most precious resource here that can be stolen by others. For each email that you read, that's actually attention that's stolen from you, right? And so you have to be, these are, for me, these are the real treasures, right? There's a saying, health is your true wealth, et cetera, et cetera. But there's life, there's health, there's time, there's attention. And all of this are actually not experienceable, right? You cannot experience any of them if you don't have any awareness, right? And that basically is the big encompassing circle to all of those, is that it's the awareness. It's what makes you experience these things, right? It's like the fear, the joy, the this, the that, the accomplishments, etc. There are just appearance in that field of awareness, right? And so when you are able to be in that state where you're seeing that, then you see how valuable that awareness is. Because nothing can come to awareness if you're dead, right? So not life, not health, not time, but attention. So that's for living a good life. And of course, love well, right? If you have a horrible relationship with your partner, or if you're polyamorous partners, then ditch them, right? You don't need to spend time with something that with someone that actually raises your stress level so much that you can't function.
Beautiful. That's really poignant for people, and the importance of ending toxic relationships, because of the cost on all of those levels are so high.
I have a personal saying, something that I invented for myself too. And aside from relating with people, it's your relationship with money, right? And for me, it's like this: no amount of money is ever going to pay for my emotional aggravation. So between being emotionally aggravated and getting a lot of money, get rid of the emotional aggravation. Beautiful. So that, and so we go to the things that I do. As I said, there is Health Optimization Medicine and Practice Association, which is essentially a nonprofit that teaches doctors and health practitioners on how to do health optimization.
Where do they find that? Because we want to put all this in the show.
They're at homehope.org.
Okay.
Homehope.org, and there's a free introductory lecture in there that was actually $2,000 a seat when it was released, but it's now being given for free. That was a whole day lecture.
Oh, beautiful.
Right on it. So you get a flavor that we really have no claims. We just really balance you. We detect your metabolites. We balance them to you between 21 and 30 years old. And then the way we balance it by shifting entire networks, not just single things, right?
Fascinating.
So and so if you take a look at that, as I said earlier, in order to experience the benefits of that, it takes about 3 to 9 months, before you get anything. But we have actually patients or clients who need immediate relief, like, for example, from pain or insomnia or anxiety, right? And those need immediate relief. So I started a company called Smarter Not Harder, and this is essentially the for-profit company that sustains the nonprofit, right? So whatever you buy from us, actually the proceeds are actually all mostly going to the nonprofit association. And this is the one with the slogan of, to decrease suffering in myself and to decrease suffering in others, knowing that there's no other. And people think that's health optimization. It's actually, I meant more than that. Is more like our egoic suffering, right? And if can we teach the world, how to decrease egoic suffering. But the initial product of that is a a brand called Transcriptions TX, and Transcriptions is actually a troches, TROCHE, and these troches are actually infused with nootropics. And the first one that we came up with is Blue Cannatine, that's made up of methylene blue, caffeine, CBD, and nicotine, right? And I made this for myself, Wade, because before the pandemic, I wasn't able to be in a single place for 2 weeks, and heaven was being in the same time zone for at least 2 weeks for me. So I'm in heaven right now. But when you land, you need to be able to deliver a lecture or see an important client or attend an important meeting and so on. And you have to be on, right? So methylene blue, of course, is works on the mitochondria by donating electrons and provides energy for the brain. Nicotine, of course, works on your nicotinic receptors, the same receptors for acetylcholine. It provides you with better working memory, and of course, also raises your dopamine. Caffeine, we know the effects of that is basically an adenosine inhibitor. It contributes to your arousal. CBD, I put in there. It's known as anti-seizure, anti-inflammatory. But the reason that I put in there is as an anti-anxiety, right? And it also increases blood flow to the brain, but as an anti-anxiety, because the spike that is sympathetic spike that's produced by caffeine and nicotine can be rounded by CBD. That's why you see, that's why we don't have a spike where it's a very gentle rise, right? And a very gentle decline. And caffeine and nicotine, CBD, and methylene blue. So that's Blue Cannatine. And then we got a lot of requests for just methylene blue, because not only does it optimize the health of the neuron, right? It also is able to produce cognitive enhancing effects, right? So it's being trialed. I think many of your listeners know who have family who have Alzheimer's, etc. is being trialed, for example, for Alzheimer's, right? To decrease the amyloid plaques. But we have no claims. We're just using this. We're just using this as performance optimizers. So I'm making a difference actually between health optimizers, which is optimizing your health, right? And performance optimizers is actually more being fit for a particular task. You're not necessarily healthy, right? But you're fit for a particular task. For example, if you take modafinil, right, and you're sleep deprived, you probably would experience the same level of cognition as when you were not sleep deprived, and that's not healthy, right? So it's
but it'll get you through a point in that.
So that's more. That's more of a, so performance for me is more of a fitness thing. You're fit to perform what, right? Whereas the other one is actually more of a health thing. So those are the nootropics that we have right now, Blue Cannatine and just blue, which is pure methylene blue, 16 milligrams methylene blue. And both of those products are scored. It can be quartered. Right, they're scored, so you can quarter them. So you could titrate. You could, if you're scaredy cat or you're caffeine naive, for example, or nicotine naive, you can try 1/4 first, and then another fourth. I'm bad because I'm a canary in a coal mine. I would respond to 1/4 like crazy, right? And it just shows you when your brain is health optimized, you don't need a lot of this stuff to boost performance, right? So that's this is at transcriptions.com. That's transcriptions. It's like prescriptions, but we did TRO after troche. And these are buccal troches. They're just like square lodges that you basically insert between your upper cheek and gum. And the reason why I chose that delivery is closest to the base of the brain, right? And therefore, methylene blue, for example, crosses the blood-brain barrier, and therefore we could have a faster absorption and a faster effect. The products that are coming up are addressing our patients' and clients' concerns. So we have THC, CBD combinations with some phytoceuticals to deal with pain, for example. We're exploring some kratom molecules in there. We are also looking at THC CBD combination for sleep, where we're looking at the valerian molecules, and we're looking at anxiety, right? With THC CBD combinations. Essentially, the formulations are already mostly done. However, as you know, Wade, when you're doing things like this, it's not the formula, it's the taste. So
yeah, that's one of the challenges that always comes up, because a lot of the nootropic stuff really tastes horrific.
Yes, it's
managing that's a whole it's a managing.
Yeah. I can't stand the taste, for example, of Nalt. The liquid Nalt. I can't stand the taste of rhodiola. It's like, and then they will over sweeten the thing. But it's a good thing I'm working with another physician, Dr. Harry McIlroy, who is also an expert in cannabis, but he has just this magic touch. I deliver him like the most bitter but most effective anti-pain turkey, and he comes up with like, oh my God, this tastes really good. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, so those products are those THC CBD products are coming up next year. Blue Cannatine and Just Blue are already out now.
Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. I got to jump on another call, but I want to thank you, Dr. Ted, for joining us today. We're going to put everything in the show notes. We'll probably split this up into 2 links because it's just such a wealth of information and knowledge. You've been so generous with your time. I can't thank you enough from all our listeners and from Bioptimizers and everything. And I'm encouraging people to follow you. Is there any place that they can follow you, do social media or anything like that, where people can get access to what your latest and stuff?
I'm social media shy. So, but my company is at Transcriptions.
Yep.
That's Instagram is at Transcriptions, and that's about. We have a Facebook group. You can find it at transcriptions.com. But generally, I don't even handle
attention
any social media stuff.
I get it.
I used to, but it's like, where do you really want your attention to be? Where do you want your attention to go? So
well, there you have it, folks.
It's a valuable resource.
Dr. Ted, you have been an absolute gem, and thank you so much. Dr. Ted Achacoso.
Wait.
Yeah.
Wait, you're putting all the accolades on me. Actually, it's the interviewer that's able to draw the interviewee, right?
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That's the secret in there. So,
well, I hope that at some time, if you come out to Los Angeles, you'll stop by the Bio Home. We got Tony Flo, and you can talk neuro-feedback. We can get into some nootropic discussions. And of course, it's an open time. Anytime you want to come back and share your wisdom with any new breakthroughs or anything, I'd love to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And for all our listeners, that's another episode of The Awesome Health Show with Bioptimizers. Make sure you talk and check out Dr. Ted Achacoso. He is truly a gem to humanity. And thank you so much for joining us today. And that's it for this episode. We'll see you again on the next one. Take care.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar, live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. What I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based, and you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.